Elizabeth I was the most powerful woman on earth. But for 45 years, she lived a lie. Beneath her gowns, she hid a medical secret so dangerous it would have destroyed her image. This week, we uncover the evidence doctors found inside the Virgin Queen and the shocking disrespect discovered when her tomb was finally opened 300 years later. To understand the strange state Queen Elizabeth was found in after her heart stopped, we have to start with the one thing she refused to remove for 45 years. Even if she had wanted to, she could not take it off. It had grown into her skin. Early in her reign, Parliament was obsessed with one goal: forcing Elizabeth to marry and produce an heir to the throne. But the young queen was terrified. Throughout her life, she had seen how wrong a marriage could go. From her father, Henry VIII, executing her mother, Anne Boleyn, to her dead sister, Bloody Mary, facing a huge backlash over the man she chose to marry during her own reign. As the daughter of a mother seen as a traitor, Elizabeth always lived in fear and never found peace. The men around her treated her very badly. Her life was filled with so many tragedies that becoming queen seemed impossible. When it happened, it seemed like a true miracle. Life taught Elizabeth to be extremely careful and suspicious of everyone. Because of this, she never wanted to share power with anyone, especially a man. But there was one problem for which Elizabeth risked the safety of her entire country. If she never married and never had a child, it meant the Tudor dynasty would end with her death. However, for Elizabeth, one thing mattered more than this. At her coronation in 1559, she was given an object that would stay with her on her body almost to the end of her life to symbolize her marriage to her kingdom, not to a man. As the decades passed, this symbol of Elizabeth's power turned into a literal trap. By March 1603, she lay dying in a deep depression. She was overwhelmed with guilt about the friends and relatives, like Mary, Queen of Scots, and Robert Devereux, whom she executed, fearing she would never enter heaven because of this. Elizabeth's doctors were very concerned. Her body wasn't the same, her fingers were swollen, and this object, once a sign of her Virgin Queen image, was now restricting her circulation. Doctors insisted it be removed immediately, but Elizabeth refused. To her, taking it off wasn't a medical procedure. It was a bad omen. She believed that removing it would symbolize the final end of her marriage to her people and her own impending death. Eventually, the pain became too strong to ignore. She either agreed to take it off or was forced to, but the ring was stuck so deep that it could not be pulled off. Historical records reveal that physicians had to remove the ring very carefully using specialized tools. Unfortunately, just as Elizabeth feared, something really bad happened a few days later. On March 24th, 1603, aged 69, Elizabeth passed away. The Tudor dynasty came to an end, and that's exactly when Elizabeth's doctors discovered secrets she had been hiding for decades. Without the Queen there to protect the lie, they could finally see it clearly, and what they found shocked them. As doctors wiped away the thick layers of Elizabeth's makeup, they froze. They expected to find a queen's skin, but what they saw instead was difficult to comprehend. In the 16th century, when men held all the power, Elizabeth was desperate to remain young and powerful. To achieve this, she did something every day that would eventually cost her her life. At the age of 29, traumatic experiences were already nothing new to the young queen. In 1562, she caught smallpox, which caused permanent damage to her body. It was her biggest insecurity, something she needed to hide. Everyone prepared for the death of the queen, as smallpox at that time was often deadly. Her survival was seen as a miracle, reinforcing the idea that she was protected by God. But it came with a price. Smallpox caused bumps on the skin that later turned into very noticeable scars. In a time when a queen's appearance was tied to power, this was a tragedy. Elizabeth thought she had found a great solution, but she didn't realize it would only make her condition much worse. She began using heavy white makeup. It covered the damage well, and over time it evolved into the iconic, unnatural white mask she is known for. The foundation she used was called Venetian Cerusse. It was a popular cosmetic used in Europe from the 16th to 18th centuries, especially during the Renaissance and Elizabethan eras. At the time, pale skin signaled wealth and nobility, as it indicated that one did not have to work outdoors. Women, and sometimes men, went to extreme lengths to achieve this look. It caused gray discoloration and even more scarring. Some historians suggest this mixture of white lead and vinegar slowly poisoned Elizabeth, as these ingredients were highly toxic. But her skin wasn't the only thing she didn't want anyone to find out about. What was found hiding under her clothes completely tore apart her image of the divine, untouchable queen she claimed to be. One man discovered a secret that Elizabeth would have died to protect. In 1599, Robert Devereux, the Queen's personal favorite, made a huge mistake. He accidentally saw the monarch in a very private situation. This contributed to Elizabeth turning against him, which eventually led to his execution. Robert abandoned his military command in Ireland in 1599 without permission, which was already a serious offense. He returned unexpectedly to England and rode straight to court. On September 28th, he entered the Queen's private bedchamber at Nonsuch Palace early in the morning. This was a major breach of court protocol, especially because access to the monarch was tightly controlled, and the Queen's morning routine was highly private and ceremonial. Robert was shocked by the state he found Elizabeth in. He was never meant to see this. At first, Elizabeth reportedly remained composed and even somewhat gracious. She allowed him to kiss her hand and spoke with him briefly. But very quickly, she realized he had failed in Ireland and had violated royal protocol in an extreme way. This incident triggered his total downfall. He was placed under house arrest and lost influence at court. This caused his rebellion and his execution for treason in 1601. But what exactly did he see that morning that shocked him so much? What he saw was a woman who was 66 years old, in an era when that was considered extreme old age. Elizabeth was likely wearing a simple nightgown or smock. She appeared smaller, thinner, and far more vulnerable than the legendary Gloriana figure seen in her official portraits. But that was not the most unusual part. While the world knew her for her striking natural red hair, years of using toxic cosmetics had damaged her scalp. She had to rely on wigs that often carried the risk of lice and skin irritation. Robert saw Elizabeth's natural hair, which was grey, and noticed that she was almost completely bald. But more of Elizabeth's secrets lie in places no one should be looking. The next revelation is far more dangerous. For centuries, historians have faced one impossible rumor. Was the Virgin Queen actually a man in disguise? If this were true, the royal doctors would have been the only people on Earth able to confirm it. What did they really find after Elizabeth's death? Elizabeth was extremely protective of her body. On her deathbed, she gave strict instructions that would spark centuries of gossip. The Queen forbade anyone from examining her body after death, even though it was a common practice for Tudor monarchs. This historical theory became popular because of Bram Stoker, the writer of Dracula. In 1910, he wrote a book called Famous Impostors, where he detailed the Bisley Boy legend, a concerning claim that Queen Elizabeth became a man after a tragedy occurred. This story begins in 1542, when a 9-year-old Princess Elizabeth was sent to the village of Bisley in the Cotswolds to escape the plague in London. While there, she supposedly fell ill and died suddenly. Her governess, Lady Cat Ashley, was scared of King Henry VIII's legendary temper. Fearing for her life, she allegedly searched the village for a girl who looked like Elizabeth to replace her before the king arrived for a visit. Finding no suitable girls, she supposedly found a fair-haired, slender boy and dressed him in the princess's clothes. The king, who did not see his daughter often and was in a hurry, did not notice the difference. The book claims that this boy then lived his entire life as Elizabeth and eventually became Queen of England. But people had even more arguments to support their claims. Elizabeth never married and never had children. She sometimes used masculine language about herself. Her appearance in later life, with heavy makeup and wigs, seemed unusual to some observers. Men of the time also struggled to explain how a woman could be such a brilliant, ruthless, and successful ruler. To them, it seemed more logical that she was secretly a man than that she was simply a genius. So what did the 17th century doctors really find when they examined her body? The sheer number of people who handled her body, from the women who dressed her every morning for decades to the men who embalmed her, makes it impossible that a male physique would have gone unnoticed. There are no credible historical records from the Tudor period suggesting that Elizabeth was anything other than female. But as the Tudor physicians moved from her robes to her mouth, they found something Elizabeth had been deeply ashamed of. A reality so strange that foreign ambassadors wrote home about it in shock. By the time Elizabeth reached her 60s, she had developed a bizarre addiction. At first, no one thought much of it. The Queen had once been known for her clear and clever way of speaking. But over time, she began to change. She no longer spoke as much in public. When she did speak, her voice sounded strange and unclear, as if something were in her mouth. Visitors from different countries began to notice something else as well. There was a strong, unusual smell around her. It was not the light, fresh scent of flowers. Instead, it was thick and sweet in a way that made people uncomfortable. Some whispered that she was cursed. Then her appearance began to change. As her face started to sink inward, the Queen tried to hide it. She stuffed pieces of soft white cloth into her mouth to make her cheeks look full. By the winter of 1578, the situation had become unbearable. The Queen was in terrible pain. She cried out, yet refused to let a doctor help her. She would rather suffer than allow anyone to touch her jaw. Everyone in the court was afraid. They wondered if their queen was dying from a secret illness. Then came the most disturbing sign of all. Her dental health declined significantly, and she lost several teeth. The cause was not poison or a curse. The real reason for the Queen's suffering was something incredibly valuable at the time. A new luxury that only Elizabeth could afford in such quantities. It was rare because it had to be grown in tropical climates, then processed and shipped long distances to Europe. Owning and serving it showed wealth and power. Aristocrats displayed it at feasts. Over the next few centuries, production increased massively, prices dropped, and sugar spread from elite tables to common households. Yet while the Queen had control over her decisions in life, in death no one respected her wishes. What Tudor doctors did was Elizabeth's worst fear. The most uncomfortable details of Elizabeth's afterlife come from one specific source, Lady Elizabeth Southwell. She was a young maid of honor to the Queen and wrote a detailed account of the Queen's final days and the unsettling aftermath. According to Southwell, she was one of the women tasked with watching over the body at Whitehall. She wrote that one night, while she and 5 other ladies were in the room, they heard something strange coming from the Queen's coffin. Elizabeth's post-mortem was extremely challenging for everyone involved. To the Elizabethans, the body of a monarch was sacred. But Elizabeth's refusal to allow her body to be embalmed created serious complications. Without it, maintaining her condition became increasingly difficult, particularly as funeral preparations extended over several weeks. This was the funeral of a woman who gave England a golden age, patronized Shakespeare, and defeated the unstoppable Spanish Armada. The powerful Queen had to be presented with dignity at her funeral before the many mourners who loved her. Tudor doctors had no other choice but to carry out preservation procedures. Tradition also dictated that the Queen's body could never be left alone. For over a month, her ladies-in-waiting had to sit in a dark room with a heavy coffin. These women had served Elizabeth for decades, and seeing their formidable queen in the corner was deeply traumatizing. Lady Southwell claimed that one night she and the other ladies heard a loud crack. At the time, such sounds were often attributed to natural changes occurring within sealed coffins. But the real difficulty began when they tried to move the coffin with Elizabeth inside it. It had to be transported by barge down the Thames from Richmond to Whitehall. Imagine a team of men trying to balance an extremely heavy box on a boat. If the boat had tipped, Gloriana would have ended up at the bottom of the river. While Elizabeth's funeral turned out to be a masterclass in theatre, 300 years later, a final act of disrespect was discovered when her tomb was opened. When King James I took the throne after Elizabeth, he did not care about her feelings. He was the son of Mary, Queen of Scots, the woman Elizabeth had executed. He made a strange and chilling choice about his predecessor's burial. In 1869, Dean Arthur Stanley, a man obsessed with history, received permission from Queen Victoria to explore the royal vaults. He wasn't just looking for curiosities. He was trying to create a definitive map of where everyone was actually buried. When he broke through into Elizabeth's vault, what he found was visually and symbolically jarring. To understand this, we need to go back a few decades earlier. Elizabeth was 20 years old, not yet queen, but a princess trying to survive under her cruel half-sister, Bloody Mary. It wasn't just a family argument. It was a life or death struggle between two women who represented two different Englands. It happened in 1554, during the first year of Mary's reign. The catalyst was Wyatt's Rebellion, an uprising protesting Mary's plan to marry Philip II of Spain. Mary's advisors were convinced Elizabeth was the secret figurehead of the rebellion. Even though there was no clear evidence, Mary signed the warrant for her sister's arrest. On Palm Sunday in 1554, Elizabeth was taken by boat to the Tower of London, the same place where her mother, Anne Boleyn, had been held and executed. She was convinced she was walking to her death. Mary was very close to signing an order for Elizabeth's execution. After 2 months in the Tower, the Queen realized she couldn't execute Elizabeth, but she couldn't let her go free either. Elizabeth was placed under house arrest for nearly a year. What Dean Stanley discovered 300 years later was absolutely disrespectful. King James had Elizabeth buried in the same tomb as the sister who had once threatened her life and caused her immense trauma. Out of respect, Dean never opened Elizabeth's coffin. But the Queen's younger brother, Edward, had an even worse fate after his death. Watch the next video to uncover the secrets of his body.